What is the alt-left? Hey, it's Prince of Queens. I'm thinking I'm gonna try and define the alt-left because I haven't really seen anybody do it. But we're gonna have to start with the alt-right because nobody really even knows what that is. I think Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert, defined it pretty well last week on the Rubin Report. Here's his clip.
I don't even know what the alt-right even is. Isn't it like a grab bag of miscellaneous things that other people don't like?
That's pretty much what I described it as at the beginning of this episode.
That being said, nobody completely knows what the alt-right really is, obviously, besides that it is largely centered around the internet. It's basically a lot of weird memes, stuff on Breitbart, and then they throw in the people that talk about like white genocide as a part of it as well. Really, I would say that it's this growing pool of common internet skeptics, the occasional loon, but often very intellectual people who criticize the regressive left and SJWs heavily. And all these people, it's their primary pastime to talk about this stuff, and they get to become the alt-right. And it's growing in numbers. But because all of it is so vague, people like myself get associated with it because I'm on the internet a lot, and I end up finding myself agreeing with people who are associating with the label. And thus, members of the regressive left have attempted to call me alt-right, even though I was a Sanders supporter. Interestingly, I have found very few people that actually claim to be alt-right. It's kind of like hipsters last decade, where everybody would call other people them, but nobody was like, fuck yeah, I'm a hipster. That all said, defining the alt-right will obviously be difficult, but since nobody has really seriously attempted to coin the phrase, I'm just going to try to define it as whatever I want it to be. Just what I want it to be. So, I consider myself a social capitalist economically with cultural libertarian leanings to a certain degree. But obviously that is a mouthful, that is impossible to define as well, so I'll tell my story about how I ended up this way. I was a Sanders supporter because I agreed with many of his economic principles in terms of getting the wealth away from the billionaire class and redistributing it to the masses. Interestingly enough, I found that I agreed strongly with many libertarians about what the problem really was, only we had different ideas about how to solve it. I was always unsure as to whether Sanders' $15 minimum wage idea would really work long term, but I always suspected that it would lead to better plans involving a potential universal basic income, which downright needs to happen in order to save humanity. I mean, things are bad enough as they are now, and things like the Flint water crisis just show how bad it can get when the economic ecosystem of a city becomes bankrupt. And that was basically a result of jobs lost due to automation and shipping them overseas. But we've barely even gotten to the tip of the iceberg with job loss because of robots, AI, and 3D printing. So we are going to need to make sure people can get by, or everybody's going to be fucked. Universal basic income already passed in Finland, and we'll see how it does. That was my main reason for supporting Sanders, all of this stuff, because I felt his ideas were the best options towards veering our society towards this future, though his consistency in terms of being on the right side of history with voting against the Iraq War and various civil rights causes didn't hurt. I want people who consider themselves alt-left to be on board with that idea in terms of this economic future, because the more and more I research into technological developments and economics, the more I am convinced that this reality is unfolding. Once I and many others vocally supported Sanders, we were confronted with one of the most terrifying aspects of the regressive left, which was the authoritarian, politically powerful, and almost religious ideology which has been third and especially fourth wave feminism, which many people refer to as intersectional feminism. I argue that this is the thread that ties the regressive left together. You see, as everybody who actively supported Sanders online can tell you, we were a major target of these people. We were called misogynists and racists just for supporting Sanders by Clinton supporters. Most of these were likely getting paid, and this was very deliberate, but it opened a lot of our eyes to how twisted this doctrine really is. If they were going to attack Sanders supporters for this stuff, you know they were messed up. It is a doctrine that tries to claim that everything is a feminist issue, and that feminism is going to be the force that delivers the earth into the promised land. They think that Black Lives Matter is a feminist issue, they think that gay men are only discriminated against because of misogyny, and they blame the patriarchy on everything that society ever has a problem with, while simultaneously defending the most patriarchal societies of them all, Islamic governments. Not sure if that has anything to do with Saudi Arabia donating so many millions of dollars to Clinton's campaign or not, but whatever. These feminists don't even seem to understand that we don't even really live in a white cis hetero patriarchy in the West like they claim, which is what disturbs me the most about them. They forget the thing that we all have in common, which is economics. They don't realize that, if anything, we live in a post-patriarchal, globalized, corporate, capitalist economy where money, shareholders, and lobby groups are more important than any one ruler. And that it isn't just men who are controlling how all of this works. Legally, anybody of any gender or race can buy their way into this system. And while there are remnants of the white male patriarchy in place in the way that many or most of the people with a lot of money and power are still white men, this is obviously not entirely true. There's a lot of corporate money invested from China and India, for example. We had a black president, and having Hillary Clinton as powerful as she is should be a sign of a few things. Though I realize the true believers will always blame the patriarchy on everything, even when the patriarchy is composed of women. Anyhow, the alt-left should be aware that this conspiracy theory revision of reality that's been concocted by third and fourth wave feminists is pure bullshit. That is the major thing that separates us from the regressive left. Finally, I want the alt-left to have a very strong emphasis on freedom of speech. People should not be getting fired for one misunderstood tweet or having the wrong political opinions. Feminists should not be taking men to court and getting them banned from the internet for 3 years for arguing with them online, like is the case of Stephanie Guthrie versus Gregory Allen Elliott. This did happen. Look into it. I don't have an entire rule book on what should be allowed on the internet or whatever. Threats of violence, calls for violence, and doxing obviously shouldn't be tolerated. But the alt-left needs to focus on this issue maybe as a main one to separate itself from the regressive left, which loves to censor. Overall, I can't say that my vision of the alt-left will be entirely different than a lot of what is being classified as the alt-right. At least if you take the best of the alt-right. The more tangible, major differences that I can see is that, well, the alt-right has this firm pull yourself up by your bootstraps and work hard for yourself mentality. I think that the alt-left is realizing that many people do want to work, but there really isn't jobs for all of them. And that is an increasing problem. I mean, in terms of history, we are living in the age of abundance. We have more food, more shelter, more transportation, and yet somehow people are working around 50 hours a week on average, tend to be in huge student loan debts, and pay more for rent than they ever have. The alt-left should realize that, and thinks it shouldn't have to be up to each individual to solve, whereas the alt-right seems to think that they should be on their own. However, in terms of the hatred of the regressive left's fourth wave, intersectional feminist, SJW, censorship, happy tyranny, I think we both can agree. But this is just designed to open up a discussion. Let me know your thoughts. And like and subscribe. Bye.